Hello, everybody. Welcome to Citizens for Global Solutions, Minnesota. This is our third Thursday movie discussion. Every month, we watch a movie or a documentary of international interest, and then we meet to discuss the issues. Usually we have a special guest, and tonight our special guest is Abid Shamdin. Abid is a global development specialist. He was born and raised in Sinjar, Iraq. For the past 5 years, he has advocated for victims of the Yazidi genocide and has managed projects that have brought aid and assistance to internally displaced Yazidis in Iraq. Shamdin worked for the United States Army in Iraq as a cultural advisor and translator. He holds a master's in political science from the School of International Service at American University. Shamdin is a co-founder of Nadjia's initiative. He was very nice to accept our invitation, so we are very grateful for you to be here, Abid. So we, as we agreed, we're going to hear a little bit from Abid at first. So if you guys can mute yourselves just to make sure. We are recording this video, this meeting, and this record will be posted in our website by next week, tops. After Abid speaks, everybody will be giving an opportunity to ask questions for him, and I know that everybody has a lot. So Abid, the floor is yours. I think I would start with a question. How did you get involved? I know that you were Iraqi and you grew up in Sinjar. How did you get involved with Nadjia's initiative organization? Good evening.
Thank you for the introduction, Katia, and it's an honor to be with everyone. Thank you for coming to this event and giving your time to listen and learn about the Yazidis. Good question. I moved to the US in 2010. As you just mentioned, I worked for the US military for 5 years, 2005 to 2010 in Iraq. And through that work, I was able to obtain a special visa to the US, and I moved to the US in July of 2010. I was a college student in 2014 when ISIS attacked the Yazidi homeland in Sinjar, my homeland, where I was born and raised and worked there for many years. My family was there, my friends, and my community. And I got involved because it was my community, and I saw what was happening in real time. I was in contact, obviously, with my family, my friends, and I was getting real-time updates about what was going on the ground on August 3rd in Sinjar. Joined a group of another Yazidis, Yazidi immigrants and others from the United States, Canada. We try to get people to know about this issue and communicated with some of my friends that were in the military in the past that I got to know through my work with the military. Holding meetings, and we came. Then we ended up coming to Washington D.C. We held a couple of rallies and tried to communicate with the State Department and got involved as much as possible to bring updates about what was going on. As ISIS attacked the Yazidi homeland, around 400,000 Yazidis lived in that region at the time. Some ISIS attacked from the southern part of the homeland. People who were on the north were able to escape to safety. faster than those in the south, obviously. You have Mount Sinjar between the two regions. South of the mountain was some people closer to the mountain were able to escape and take refuge in the mountain. But most of them were trapped on the mountain as all around Mount Sinjar was surrounded by ISIS, the territory was taken by them. Villages like where Nadia is from, the movie you watched about Nadia's story, were far from Mount Sinjar. They were not able to escape to the mountain in time, and therefore they were surrounded and captured by ISIS. On that day alone, more than 6,500 Yazidi women and children were taken into captivity by ISIS. Thousands of Yazidi men and older women were killed, and I believe tens of thousands on that day and a few days were trapped on the mountain until the US government got involved on a limited basis, carried some airstrikes, and opened a safe corridor for them to travel from the mountain to Syria, then to the Kurdish autonomous region in the far north of Iraq. Today, after all these people were able to escape to the Kurdish region, internally displaced camps were set up for them. The majority of the population was set up in these camps and IDP camps. Those that were captured, some of them are still missing. In fact, about 2,800 are still missing, either somewhere in Turkey, Syria, and other places with families of ISIS members and others. As the coalition forces in the Iraqi forces were able to regain control of the region, some Yazidis since 2015 have been slowly returned into the region. Currently, the majority of Yazidis are still displaced in these camps because what ISIS did when they controlled the region, planted many explosives and destroyed the schools, the clinics, the livelihoods, the farms, and destroyed everything that was in their path. So now, as people have been trying to return, there are many challenges because of access to basic services such as water, healthcare, education, and just being able to have make a living. And that's why it has been taking this much time for people to be able to return. On the other hand, there are also some security challenges because the area is a disputed area between the Iraqi government and the Kurdish autonomous region. And as ISIS was being driven out by multiple forces, some even foreign factions and militias have now gained control of some of the parts of the region. So there are some security complications on the top of access to basic services and being able to find a job and make a living. Currently, about 140,000 have returned. The rest are either in IDP camps. A very small number lives in refugee camps in Turkey, about 4,000 or 5,000. A similar number in the camps in Greece. And since 2014, close to 100,000 have immigrated to Europe and mainly to Germany. And so the biggest challenge was how to get the word out about Yazidis, a small religious minority that was not well known in the US, in Europe, and other places. In Nadia's work, that's where Nadia's work and came in, working to advocate and spread the word about what was happening to Yazidis and the need to rescue those women and children in captivity, the need to make sure that sustainable conditions are created back in the homeland so that people can return home the need to hold ISIS accountable for the crimes they have committed against Yazidis, crimes of genocide and sexual violence against women and children. Advocating globally at the UN, in the US and Europe, and trying to get decision makers and world leaders to step up and take some action about these issues. Now it has been about almost 7 years. It's difficult to think back and see that almost 7 years and still the majority of the population is displaced. And also then after the advocacy, as Nadjia was doing that work, we saw that livelihoods of people and access to basic services also a big challenge. And so trying to couple that with our advocacy and the work we're doing globally, we started Nadjia's initiative and worked on trying to get basic services restored in Sinjar, in the region, and starting with rebuilding farms, working with countries like the US and France and others to demine the area from explosive, then helping rebuild their farms, schools, clinics, and access to clean water. So this journey has taken so much time, and thanks to Nadjia's work and her advocacy and her the work she has done, now things have started to change a little bit. There are improvements, however, there are many challenges, and as this story, is getting older, so to say, new things come up in the region and in the world, and people move on to the next topic. And so it's challenging to keep this topic alive while the needs and the suffering have, the needs are there and the sufferings of the community have not ended yet. I know you watched the film, but I also highly encourage you to, if you are able to, read Nadjia's book. It's called The Last Girl. It's a story of, it's her story, her family's story, and the story of the entire community. You might know that Pope Francis visited Iraq just recently, and he was asked by, I think, the reporters or someone why he made that decision, and he mentioned that because of he made this decision mainly because of his meeting with Nadjia. She met him in 2019, and because he read the book and understood the types of crimes committed against the Yazidi community, and specifically against the women and children. So I think that if you have the chance to read the book, it tells the story. And now we are at a point where we have, thanks to Nadjia's work at the UN, been able to create a UN team that is responsible. It's called UNITAD, Investigating ISIS Crimes, is responsible for collecting the evidence of ISIS's crime in Sinjar, but in general in Iraq. Now this evidence is supposed to go to a court of law, be used to bring ISIS to justice. There already are some cases, individual cases in Europe, but not in the US yet. I think some cases are about to start in the coming weeks against ISIS fighters and their families that participated in the genocide against the Yazidis, and especially participated in the crimes of sexual violence against Yazidi women. The challenges of access to basic services are still there. Although we have been able to restore some farms and livelihoods, restoring schools and clinics, restoring the north side of the mountain because it was taken first early on restoring water in most parts of that region. But as people start to return to the region, to Sinjar, the needs for greater interventions are there again, because again, around 250,000 or 200,000 Yazidis are still displaced in the Kurdish autonomous region in IDP camps, and families continue to return on a weekly basis, and those families obviously need access to those basic services. I hope that was just a brief, quick overview of why and what we are doing. And if Kathy, if you have questions, or if someone has questions, I'm happy to, if I missed something, I'm happy to go back and try to explain.
Thank you, Abid. Yes, that was very important what you said. But I would like to open for questions from the audience. You guys can send, oh, okay, Jim, would you like to ask your question?
There's Jim unmuted now. Again, I'm trying to fill in the gaps of my knowledge and to get a really candid picture. And again, it's an immensely large challenge that you and Nadjia have of trying to right wrongs and to provide some type of a meaningful life for the people that are there. But I'll start out with a general question. Since you are part of Iraq, how easy is it for you to work through the Iraqi government to have access to the area and to get support, security and support from the Iraqi government?
Thanks. That's a great question. I think that's the challenge. The challenge and the work we are doing advocacy globally is mainly trying to get nations like the US, the European nations, to work with the Iraqi government to work on some of these challenges the Yazidi community is facing in terms of security, like you mentioned, and access to services. But Iraq is going through some challenging times as well in terms of economic challenges, security challenges. The government has very limited authority over some of the militia that are spread out throughout the country. I think it was just a week ago that the Iraqi parliament now passed a law acknowledging the crimes committed against the Yazidis and the Yazidi women. 7 years. It took them 7 years. Many European nations, Canada, and others have before them acknowledged what happened to Yazidis as a genocide, and acknowledged the crimes of sexual violence. Obviously, Europe has nominated Nadjia many awards for her work and because of what happened to her and the Yazidi women. So it's they are not doing their part, to be honest, to help the Yazidi heal and recover from this genocide and what they went through.
Anybody else?
I've got more questions, but I'm going to let everybody else get a chance before I can.
Okay. Okay, Nancy.
Hi, Abid, really nice to meet you. This film, I just watched it last night. The title of the film, On Her Shoulders, is very appropriate because, we all felt literally this wonderful young woman is carrying the weight of this responsibility on her shoulders. As a mother of a son who's 26, I guess I was just relating. I thought that the documentary was so well done in that, of course, yes, we got a lot of the facts of the story, but it really showed what she was going through. And there was sort of this dissonance between, you know, she was receiving awards and accolades, and, you know, various journalists were praising her efforts. And it was so obvious that that didn't really mean a lot to her. And I'm just going to read one quote that I wrote down. I mean, there's a lot, but that I wrote down during the film that really struck me. She said, "As a girl, I wish I didn't have to tell the people this happened to me. I wish it hadn't happened to me so I wouldn't have to talk about it. I wish people knew me as an excellent seamstress, as an excellent athlete, as an excellent student, an excellent makeup artist, an excellent farmer. I didn't want people to know me as a victim of ISIS terrorism." I'm having a hard time getting these words out. Anyway, I thought it was wonderfully done. Abid, if I'm not mistaken, you have since married Nadjia. So I'm very pleased knowing this. I mean, her translator was such a great support for her, and I kept appreciating him for being there. But anyway, you know, and I know she has all of the people behind her. She has a lot of support, but it's quite inspiring, but also very, very sad that a young woman has to take this on. Anyway, I'm very moved. I guess that's all I'm saying. There's much that I'd like to know about the political and the reality of life there and all of that. But, you know, I think what is just sort of a thunderbolt to all of us is the resilience of this young woman who had this was not her desire to live her life this way. She wanted to live as a simple person who enjoyed life like all of us do. And she's had this mission thrust upon her. There was one point, this is the last thing I'll say, there was one point where there was sort of like a parade, right? We saw a lot of men crying throughout all of this. And there was one where a man was just weeping and crying with the pain, I'm sure you can imagine, of the various family members that he had. And then they showed Nadjia about to speak. And then she started crying herself. Something, I don't know if remember if it was a song or something someone said, but she started crying, and someone came to her and said, you know, they're getting their strength from you. You can't cry or they'll all cry. Thinking about the weight of that on this young woman. So all I'm saying is that I'll never forget her story, and I'm very touched, and please thank her for sharing such a courageous heart with all of us. And hopefully that can inspire my own life with the small matters that I'm trying to take on in my life. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, no, she's a person that enjoys just the very simple things in life, and being able to take a walk, go and hiking. She's a vegetarian, enjoys vegetarian meals. She enjoys simple, very simple things in life, and it's a very heavy weight to be on anyone's shoulders, to be honest with you, and especially someone that has lost family, community, and many things in life, and just then going from that simple life on a farm in a village to on a global stage after going through so much trauma. It's just it's hard to comprehend, and so she's a brave woman. She's a brave woman, but resilient, but also she enjoys just simple things in life.
Thank you, Nancy. Kathy first, and then Fadia. Kathy, please.
Thank you. Watching the film, and then I did a little bit of reading this afternoon, what I could find online. I'm interested to know about the religion of the Yazidis and how it relates to your political situation, to how it relates to Islam. I don't know anything about the religion practiced by Yazidis. So if you could talk about that a little bit.
Thank you so much. That's a good question, a great question, actually. Well, so me, myself, I'm not going to say I'm not a religious man. I'm a spiritual man. But about the Yazidi religion, so just going a little bit back, the reason that Yazidis, the Yazidi religious text is an oral one. It's not written because there is a reason for that. And throughout history, Yazidis have faced similar campaigns of violence, like the one in 2014 at the hands of ISIS, from the Ottoman Empire, from others prior to that. And that's why it's a small group. There were forces. In fact, to go back to James's question earlier, communities in the Kurdish autonomous region, many of them were used to be in the past Yazidis, but were forced to convert. And Yazidis survived in the mountains in Sinjar and other places because they wanted to keep their faith. And they have been persecuted because of their faith throughout history. We believe in God. We have temples throughout Sinjar. We have the main temple, Lalish, in the Kurdish region area. Our new year comes next month, and it's in April. I think it's always the second Wednesday of April. Other things that Wednesday is like a Sunday, like how Sunday is a prayer day and holy day for Christians, and Friday for Muslims. Wednesday is usually that for us. We have our own holidays, but it's a completely separate religion from Islam. It's older and has been in the region for centuries. And the campaign by ISIS in 2014 was actually a result of many years of anti-Semitic rhetoric against the Yazidi community, being a small religious minority. Just the anti-Semitic rhetoric and the misinformation about this small group, and the fact that there was so much hate speech going on in the region, and that also led to many people joining ISIS when ISIS came in the region and helped them take control of the area and capture many Yazidis. But again, I think, as I mentioned earlier, if you're able to read Nadjia's book, if you're not able, maybe I can send it to you. If you can't get it, I'm happy to send one to you or anyone. It talks about the community, the religion a little bit. It talks about her family, and beautifully about the Yazidi community as a whole.
Is its roots related to the Zoroastrians?
Similar, very similar. It's kind of similar traditions, similar practices, but it's separate.
Thank you.
Fadia.
Good evening, Abid. Thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate that you being here and telling Nadjia's story. I actually watched the movie when it came out. I'm originally from Yemen, so I'm very familiar with kind of like living in a community when you have ISIS or Al Qaeda or Ansar Sharia around. I think my question for you is, here in the US in the past 4 years, since a lot of our audience are Americans, there was a lot of kind of like military focus on destroying caliphate, which we know it in Arabic khilafat, which was the under kind of like ISIS leader. Do you believe that ISIS leader and khilafat is gone? And what's your thought about that?
Thank you for the question. Look, so as I mentioned, I worked for the US military. Back when I was there, ISIS, the ISIS, that name didn't exist. It was Al Qaeda and other names. And the US military fought them and the Iraqi military fought them, and they kind of disappeared. Then they came again under this new name, ISIS. Yes, the leader of the ISIS was killed in Syria. Some of their other commanders were killed, but it's an ideology. It's a system of spreading hate and violence. And today, as the Iraqi government, for example, and the international community announced that ISIS has been defeated, at least in territory, but every single day there are attacks in Iraq in separate parts, because they are regrouping now and connecting again and trying to use different tactics to make attacks. So to answer your questions, no, unfortunately, it's an ideology, and that ideology is hard to defeat. It takes real work. It takes changing the system of education in Iraq and in the region, and it's not about militarily defeating them.
Thank you, Abid. Yes, Dennis?
Got myself unmuted. Thank you. Abid, thanks for being here with us and helping us understand the story better. It's been a two-part lesson for me. I remember 7 years ago when all the reports of the atrocities and just how ISIS set upon the Yazidis so much, and wondered at the time, I wondered what they had against them so special that they were bringing such atrocities on them. And excuse me, I noted it in the movie, and thanks to Nadjia for the good work that she's doing. And it's got to be very difficult, and things come across very, very well in the movie. I learned a lot there. And then you're filling in some gaps. But I remember part of the movie where I think it was in Greece, but the fellow who had been, Luis might have been his name, who had been a prosecutor with the International Court, he mentioned some difficult things, and part of it had to do with, I think he said that what ISIS started, Europe has continued. And it seems as though there's no place for the Yazidis to go. And they are just kind of stuck in some respects, and probably some awful camps or what have you. And I just wonder how it would seem that European nations have taken a similar attitude toward the Yazidis. In terms of just giving them no concessions whatsoever. And I hope that they'll assist the people who are still stuck in refugee camps or whatever, that there'll be some assistance in helping them get back to their homeland. So many thanks to you, and thanks to Nadjia.
Thank you so much.
So about Europe, do you have any insights as to why the persecution seems in a different way to have carried forward into Europe, and they just get no consideration from anyone.
Okay, so sorry, was your question is that why they don't welcome Yazidis as refugees?
Yeah, it seems as though the persecution has followed them to Europe. That first ISIS really had it out for them apparently, and now they're getting so little concern expressed by any of the European nations, and no one wants to take them in, etc.
Yes, so unfortunately, a very small number of Yazidis have been formally accepted as refugees through just across the board. Mostly survivors of sexual violence, where about 1,000 were taken to Germany, a small number to France, Canada, and Australia. Those Yazidis that have made it to Europe and Germany most of them have gone through illegal, very dangerous ways through Turkey and then Greece, and have made it to Europe. To your question, I do not know why. You know, going through all that process of violence and being displaced, and now 7 years after their displacement, even those in Greece and Turkey have not been welcomed, which I don't understand. And this is something we have advocated for in the past and tried to get nations to give a special status to Yazidis, at least until their homeland is safe and they're able to return, but that has not happened. And this is part of the challenge, unfortunately.
Difficult things to deal with. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dennis. Dick.
I just want to comment on Dennis's observation. I think the big example of exclusion is what we're dealing with in the United States right at this very moment with anybody that wants to come into our country. The the attitudes that we're seeing on television just today from the border, the Haiti refugees and so forth. I guess what I'm wondering, Abid, is what you always, or I always feel so small in terms of a solution. And I think probably a lot of citizens are in a position similar to mine where they have a lot of feelings about the problem and would like to help, but don't think they can do anything. And if you had any particular advice for people like myself or ourselves of things that we can do that do make a difference, even if we don't think they make a difference.
Yes, thank you for that question. Well, again, unfortunately, the US has not helpful in terms of welcoming Yazidis since 2014 after this genocide and this widespread sexual violence campaign against Yazidi women and children in particular, being displaced in the camps in Iraq and Syria and Turkey and Greece have not gotten any chance to even apply and wait in line to come to the US, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is. It's the things that can be done from the US, and honestly, aside from what we have been, and the US government has been helpful in many regards in terms of like political support on the ground early on, like I mentioned earlier during this discussion. They helped open a safe corridor for Yazidis that were trapped on Mount Sinjar when ISIS was taken over in 2014. And then now we are working very closely with the US government, with USA aid to bring some projects to Sinjar and for the Yazidis. Things that can be done by the average person in the US is, for example, just simply being aware of what's happening is very helpful. the most difficult thing for us and for Nadjia certainly was to go around and just talk to people and telling them about what was happening and who Yazidis were. Well, now we have, we can connect with people like you, and there's Nadjia's book you can read and learn about the community. There is, I think someone in the chat just shared, there's Nadjia's initiative.org where we post all of our projects. We have our Twitter page and Instagram page. Every day, almost every day, we post about every project we do and what's coming up, and post important statements about challenges facing the Yazidi community. Those are things that can be done, but also just simply write into representatives in the government, Congress, and making them aware that they need to be aware of these things and try to help in some of these situations.
Thank you, Abid. And also, I wanted to add something. I don't think everybody wants to come to, as a refugee to the US or somewhere else. Everybody that's, a refugee is leaving their countries because of war, or because of internal conflicts or persecution. So if they're leaving their home countries or homes, it's because something really bad is happening, not because they actually want. So I think we live in a culture that seems to be angry or to estrange foreigners or strangers just because we don't know them. The fact that we don't know the immigrants or refugees doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean that they are bad or good. What you feel it's what you're feeling. What is happening to them is something completely different. And I think it's our obligation to understand what is happening to each one of these people that are running away from their countries. And many of those are really in pain because they left behind houses and families, or families were killed. So I think we need to keep that in mind, that not everybody wants to come to the United States, but we need to actually understand what is happening. So every country that has a big number of refugees, they are having trouble. And so instead of us judging that people because they need a refuge, they need asylum, we needed to open a book, open a newspaper, and try to understand why they are trying to escape. And another thing that I wanted to add for you guys, that I did a quick search according to the Norwegian Refugee Council. That was the fastest one. So this is the list of 10 countries that received the most refugees. So we're talking about refugees. Number 1, Lebanon, with 21% of the total of population. In second, Jordan. Third, Turkey. Fourth, Liberia. Fifth, Uganda. 6, Nauru. 7, Malta. 8, Djibouti. 9, Sweden. 10, Sudan. So, and others come after: Germany, Ethiopia, United States with 0.25%, or 838,000 refugees. So United States, it's not the champion of receiving refugees. United States receives the most immigrants, yes, most than other countries, but not all immigrants are asylum seekers. So it's a different situation. I wanted you to keep that in mind. Thank you. Yes, Christy. And Chris, you're muted.
Yes, sorry. Thank you very much, Abid, for being here tonight and enlightening us, and also for Nadjia's amazing story and truth telling. And I guess I was struck with the film with kind of all the questions, you know, at the beginning, you know, asking her to tell her stories. And so a part of me was just like, oh my gosh, is there a better way to have, I don't know, these stories come to light and that are hopefully doing less trauma to folks that are trying to tell their truths and raise awareness of situations. So that's just in my own thought processing around storytelling and trying to have those truth sessions. And linked to that, I guess, is a question around whether or not there's memorial sites that are already starting to emerge in Iraq in spaces to honor both the folks who've lost their lives, and then whether or not Iraq, since you mentioned they finally have acknowledged the genocide, whether there may be opportunities for kind of a truth-telling space for kind of to document and to really raise awareness and acknowledgement and hopefully eventual action. Thanks.
Thank you. No, it's an honor to be with everyone. Thank you for being at this discussion. That's a good question. So what we have been focusing on so far is trying to focus on the immediate needs, basic needs of people when they return, livelihoods, access to basic services. But we have started and just now moving into focusing on that as well. We have a project coming up that will create a cemetery and a memorial for the victims of this genocide. It's about to launch. We're also doing something in Nadjia, specifically in her village, for the victims of that village specifically. We are hoping, we're in discussions and have ideas going around and working with partners to also create a genocide museum and document all the sites. So far, about 84 or 86 mass graves have been discovered, trying also create like memorials around these sites as well. When it comes to collecting the evidence and memories and things like that, through Nadjia's work, as I mentioned early on, at the UN passed a resolution, and that resolution led to the creation of a special investigative team that is collecting evidence related to these crimes committed by ISIS in 2014 and after. And so that team is collecting the evidence. We're working closely with them and hoping to someday use that evidence in a court somewhere to hold ISIS accountable for those crimes.
Thank you. If I can just one follow-up that I don't know if you've had an opportunity to go to the Canadian Museum for Human Rights, but it's in Winnipeg, not far from us here in Minnesota, but they do have kind of a genocide area. And so I'm both the genocide and then the human rights side of the resiliency, and that, you know, they've done, I think, a good job of trying to figure out how do you balance kind of to transform the victim to also what you were talking about with the survivor and the hope and the resilience, the courage, the affirmation of obviously what it comes out of, it sounds like your culture too, so that you can uplift that. But I don't know. And there are sites of conscience. There's a whole connected group around, you know, around the world that have these various sites that are trying to also document both sides of the story kind of for healing.
No,
Thanks.
unfortunately, I have not been to that museum. Are you referring to the International Sites of Consciousness? Okay, I'm working with that group. They are our partner, our friend, exactly with that group to create a museum and memorialize these sites. So I know Liz is my friend.
Yes, Dennis, and before you you ask your question, I wanted to let everybody know that we are sending links on the chat, so you guys can actually click those links and they're going to open in a different window for you. So it's not going to interfere with your window here, and you can read those resources after. Otherwise, you can contact me and I can send out to whoever wants to have those. Dennis.
Thank you, Katya. I've been reflecting for the last minutes about the time that Nadjia spent in Canada. And that was brought to mind just a minute ago, Canada. And I reflected on just how receptive all the Canadian people that were involved, and especially the people in the Parliament in being supportive of her. And then I got to thinking they took her out to London, Ontario, where the largest Yazidi community in Canada lives. And that got me thinking about, I wonder if there's anything at all to be pursued with the good connections that Nadjia made while she was there, to see if perhaps there might not be some way that Canada could play a role in providing opportunity for people who couldn't get back to the homeland to perhaps settle with that community in London. And there's lots of farmland around there too, I'll note.
Yes, they have been, they were very welcoming to Nadjia when she was there. And as a result of her visits there and her discussions with the government, they received and welcomed about 1,200 Yazidis. Mostly families of survivors of sexual violence and the women and their families. So, and actually that program is kind of continuing, but has paused, I think, due to COVID. Yes, and Nadjia has met with Prime Minister Trudeau a few times since that time.
She does well.
The Canadians are excellent. And my mother-in-law is from London, Ontario. Yes, Kathy, and then Jim.
Just a question about the origin of the Yazidis. Is the origin Arab or Persian, or neither?
I would say neither. I think Yazidis and Assyrians were the very first inhabitants of that region around the Tigris and the Euphrates. But no, they're not Arab nor Persians.
Thanks.
Jim? And you are muted.
Excuse me. Now it's my turn again. I think I'll ask two questions because I may never get another chance. But one of the first is, has there been any thought about a independent Yazidi sponsored security force, seeing that there's so much unrest in that area, and there are other militias of various sorts. So that's one thought. But my more educational question had to do with the internal displacement camps, are they primarily funded by the United Nations itself, or by government agencies like the USAID or the Swedish government or German government, or where does the actual material support come from for those internal displaced people's camps?
Thanks, James. Yes, so as ISIS took over the region in 2014, many Yazidis stayed up on that mountain and were able to fend off ISIS a little bit, and then later regain some of those areas. What we have been doing is trying to advocate for making sure that people from that region are able to enlist in official military and police forces so that they can take up the security of their own region, their own areas. But obviously there are many challenges around that, and recently we have made some progress, but it hasn't materialized yet. But that's the goal. On the issue of IDPs, the camps are managed by the Kurdish autonomous regions government mostly, and the UN. But all the funding comes from, yes, through the United Nations, mostly from Europe, the US, and some Arab countries.
Thank you, Abid. Did you ask your 2 questions, Jim?
I did, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Abid, I have 2 questions for you. So you said now you have a team or a group who is your UN group. So I was interested in knowing more in what they're doing, if you could elaborate. And the second question is, where is Nadjia? What country is Nadjia living right now?
Do you mean the UNITAD team I mentioned that are investigating ISIS crimes?
Okay.
Is that what you're referring to?
I'm sorry?
The UN team you're referring to, are you talking about the UN investigative team?
Well, because I had the impression that you said that you have a team, but perhaps it's not your team, is a UN team?
It's a UN team. Yeah, sorry.
Okay. So it's not from Nadjia Initiative, it's the UN team.
No, it was created as a result of Nadjia's work and with her lawyer, and with that advocacy, it took about 1.5 years to create that team. It's a UN team. It's called UNITAD, UN Special Investigative Team, to collect ISIS's evidence in these mass graves and just take testimonies and things like that. I will share that with you as well, either in the chat or we work with them very closely. In fact, I'm meeting them next week. So
what's
we have been working.
Update? Have you seen some serious progress, and do they face trouble when they are investigating inside?
Yes, they have made some progress collecting evidence, especially in Sinjar, exhuming some mass graves, collecting that evidence, collecting testimonies, and even public evidence that is available. And they have done a good, they have made progress in terms of collecting this evidence. But the question is, where will that go? We don't know, and nobody knows, because there is no place yet officially that will take this evidence and use it to prosecute ISIS members. So that's the next step. The next step is that, can we convince, for example, the ICC or another court to take up this case and try to prosecute some ISIS members? However, the evidence is being, they are feeding that evidence to individual cases across Europe, and hopefully now in the US soon. In terms of the question about Nadjia, you saw in the film probably prior to the pandemic, we were basically just moving around from one country to another, depending on work. But her base is Germany, but she lives partially in Germany and partially in the U.S. With often going back to Iraq for the work that we are doing.
Thank you, Abid. Anybody else?
I'll just add to that. In the film, it seemed like she really had a desire to go home. And then it was so painful to see her going through her hometown, which of course was decimated. Does she have any desire to live there?
Well, now, with the work she's done, especially bringing attention to what ISIS did, security-wise, it's difficult, but also being able to, going back to that region, it's not accessible to then do the work that she's doing, internationally. But yes, I think so. Someday, I think get better there. I think so. I think she would. But we do go back. We were just there actually last month.
You have still major security if when you're going back there. I mean, obviously, it's still, I would think, a very dangerous return trip.
It is. Yes. The times that we have gone back, usually we go with this UN team that is doing the investigations because we work very closely with them and it's related to that work. So we usually travel around with them. The government also knows, they know her. And so, but yes, there are very challenging situations in that region.
Thank you. Fran, you had a question. And you were muted. You were muted.
Christy just asked my question because in the movie she had real security concerns if she went home. So I wondered how they made that happen.
Okay. Did we have any other questions for Abid? We are about to wrap up. No? Oh, okay, Dennis.
I just, sorry that I try not to monopolize, but I just want to, I'm glad, Abid, that you shared the story about Nadjia having met with Pope Francis. Many were wondering why he was going to Iraq, particularly at this time. Now we know the answer.
Yes, no, I can, I think I have the video of what he said with some translation. I think he speaks Italian.
He speaks 8 languages.
Yeah, I will share it with Kathy. Maybe she can send it around later.
Yeah, that would be nice. Thank you.
Yes, happy to, of course.
Yeah, if you can send to me, I can send it to you guys.
No problem.
Okay, so if we don't have any other questions, oh, okay, Fadia, you do have a question.
I do have one last question. I think while we are kind of like talking about the situation in Iraq, I'm wondering, Abid, if there is a situation for women, whether that kind of like from the Yazidi minority or others who have been victimized by ISIS and been pregnant while ISIS was there, what the future looks like for their kids. I know, like in terms of I'm not sure how much that the Iraqi government has been kind of like doing that, while, for example, like in the US and Canada and Australia and Europe are still like figuring out how they can integrate those kids back to the community, given the fact that the history that they went through, and with their kind of like whether that their moms were enslaved with ISIS fighters, or their parents or their dads were ISIS fighters.
Thanks. Yes. So I think for what I've learned doing this work and in the past few years is that the aftermath of genocide is much more difficult than the actual genocide itself. It takes years and if not decades for people to heal and to recover. There are many consequences, unfortunately, of genocide, including displacement, poverty, child marriages. In this case, with the Yazidis, on top of that, the women and children that have been enslaved. I know many children that have been returned from captivity that are struggling to reintegrate to the community because they were brainwashed and trained by ISIS. Same with some of the women, because they were very young. They were just not even teenagers at the time. And yes, some have also have given birth to some children, and that's also a challenge. We have about 2,800 still. We don't know where they are, including some family members of Nadjia, her nieces and nephew, her sister-in-law, and many others. So this topic is also challenging, and it's not an easy one to deal with, but I'm certain that we can find also a solution for those women, trying to take them somewhere safe where they can recover safely and have a life again. And we're working with some European partners, hopefully trying to figure out a way to help them out. But sorry to specifically answer your question about the Iraqi government. No, they are not doing anything about it at all.
Can I ask one more question?
Okay.
Have you been working with any of the centers for victims of torture and rape?
No, not specifically. You mean in the U.S.?
Well, we had the third center, that was started in the world here in Minnesota, and it's really well known. And they actually have locations in various different countries as well. So I think I'm just thinking of the servicing of community members as you're trying to build the infrastructure and services. So I think it would be worth.
I'm taking notes actually as you speak. So with the Canadian Museum, this center, I will try to look them up and see if we can.
I just sent
hopefully
the
connect
link.
with them.
I just put the link for you in the.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and if you need connections, you can.
Christy is your person.
Right.
Okay, well, I would like to thank all of you for attending. That's been amazing moment of learning for everybody. Abid, thank you so much. You accepted my invitation immediately, so that was a joy and at the same time a surprise for me. So thank you so much for that. We learned so very much from you. And on behalf of CGS Minnesota, Citizens for Global Solutions in Minnesota, I'd like to thank you very much. Please send our love to Nadjia. We appreciate everything that she has done. Tell her that we see her and we see what she went through, and we are in heart with her. In addition, I already said that we already had this conversation, but now it's been recorded, so you can come and ask for this to happen. We talked about collaborating, so I hope that Nadjia's initiative and Citizens for Global Solutions Minnesota can collaborate So I know that we will be in touch and seeing ways of how this could happen in the near future.
Thank you so much, Kathy, and everyone for your time and for listening and for reading and just knowing about what happened to Yazidis and what challenges remain. It has been an excellent opportunity to speak with everyone. I wish it was normal times where we can meet in person, and I would hold a map and you know, point to different directions where things happened and show you images and photos and things with a PowerPoint and sit down with you over coffee or dinner and just to talk about these things. But this, nevertheless, this is also a great opportunity to have a conversation. And again, thank you so much for your time, and looking forward to being in touch with some of you.
Wonderful, thank you so much. And also wanted to remind everybody that this event happens every month, every third Thursday of every month. And so we, today we discussed about On Her Shoulders, which is the documentary that retells the story of Nadjia Murad that was kidnapped by ISIS in Iraq, and she managed to escape, and now she tells her story to the world about the 2014 genocide of the Yazid people, and she ended up winning well-deserved Nobel Peace Prize in 2018. I also wanted to let you know, everybody, that the CGS Minnesota is also going to host a Human Rights Forum on March 30 from 10 to 11 a.m. I'm going to share with you the information in the chat. If you are willing to, please participate. We have 5 wonderful speakers. They are all females, and they are from 5 different countries. And I think it's gonna be a good moment of learning again for all of us. Thank you again, Abid, for coming here. And thank you everybody for being here. I appreciate all of you. And in the name of CGS, have a wonderful night.
Have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Abid.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.